let's see. Okay. So for today's session is a very important session because not all of you maybe are familiarized on how to write letters of recommendations for college application in the US. So it's a very different process than the one that we are used to. And for that, we invite a very good friend and colleague from Education USA. She is Michelle Johansson, and she works for Delta State University. So please pay attention, ask questions, and I will let the floor to you, Michelle. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me. Like Mabel said, I am Michelle Johansson, and I am from Delta State University. And not only did Mabel come to visit me, but I've been to Guadalajara previously. And so it's a great pleasure to be here and talk with you about something that is important for college admissions, whether you're looking for undergraduate or graduate school applications, and that is letters of recommendation. I actually feel very strongly about letters of recommendation because I am asked to write them a lot. So I'm going to share some overall views of letters of recommendation, and then some tips and guides for who to ask, when to ask, what you can do to help your recommender write the best recommendation for you. And then I would love to answer any questions that you might have as well. So, and if you have any questions along the way, please feel free to wave at me or signal or anything like that about if you have a question as we go along. And if there are any terms that you're unfamiliar with, please go ahead and stop me and ask. I'm happy to do that. So I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. I mean, we're how many years after the pandemic, and I still get nervous about sharing. Okay, woo, that's like a lot of screens there. Don't need to share all of them. There we go. Let's see, are you guys seeing a blue screen maybe? The blue PowerPoint screen?
Yeah, we can see the presentation.
Okay, perfect. Okay, just making sure. Okay, so again, I'm Michelle Johansson. I work in the International Student Services Office. I also am a professor here at Delta State, so that's how I get to write recommendation letters. Okay, so first of all, one of the big questions is that students have when they're getting ready for college. I also have a daughter who just finished her freshman year in college. So we went through this exact same thing if there are any high school students out there. When do you ask for recommendations? I start off with this because it's important to remember that you are asking somebody for a favor. You're asking a teacher, a professor, a colleague, somebody for a favor. And so it's really important that you time this as best as you can to make it as easy as possible for a person to write you a really strong letter of recommendation. So I always start off with when. When do you ask? So if you are an undergraduate or you want to be an undergraduate, you are completing your undergraduate application, there are lots of deadlines depending on the schools that you are applying to. There are terms like early decision. You might see early decision. You might see early action. You might see early decision 2. You might see regular decision. You might see rolling decisions, okay? So all of these are really important to keep track of. And of course, Education USA advisors are knowledgeable about all of these terms and deadlines and how to navigate this. I've generally put them in order. So early decision usually means that the application, including the letters of recommendation, usually are between November 1st and November 15th. So that's pretty early. I have also seen some early decision application deadlines as early as October 15th. And it really depends on the schools that you're applying to. So make sure that you are looking at that. And usually the colleges on their websites are very clear. So that's early decision. That's one option. Option two is early action, which is also confusingly sometimes between November 1st and November 15th. So again, you need to make sure that you know which one you're deciding. Early decision means I usually only do one application, one college for early decision. And that means if you get in, you're going, okay? Early action is not binding, which means if you can apply to generally as many early action deadlines as you want, as many schools as you want, and generally, usually, you do not have to make a decision until like May 1st and stuff. So again, early decision, early action are the two that have significant differences. So just making sure you know that. Early decision 2 can also be January 1st. Not as many schools use that. Regular decision, usually the application is due, including the letters of recommendation, between January 1st and February 1st. Some universities will make it earlier. So for example, the University of Texas has an earlier regular decision. So sometimes that can be in as early as December. So again, that's something to think about. Rolling decision means that there's no actual, one deadline, that's it. You can keep applying, the application cycle is open and such. I want to caution here that with recommendations, if a university or college requires recommendations, great. If they don't, that's okay too. Recommendations are not necessarily an indication of the quality of the higher education institution. So that's really important to consider, that it does not, if a college requires 3 letters of recommendation versus another that doesn't, it doesn't mean that the one that requires 3 is more competitive or has a higher quality of education than one that doesn't. So, and the other thing is that sometimes the student application deadline is different than the teacher counselor recommendation deadline. So my best tip for when to ask for recommendations for undergraduate applications is to make sure that you are looking at those applications very carefully. So that's the first part. There's all of these terms for undergraduate application. If any of you are applying for graduate school, luckily, there's none of these kinds of, generally there are none of these kinds of terminology. It's generally one deadline. So in general, so this is just for undergraduate application deadlines. Okay, so if you're,
I'm sorry,
go ahead.
Michelle. Hi, how are you?
Hi, Christy.
Hi. Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you could share or you could present the file because we're seeing the PowerPoint file, and
Oh, gotcha.
we'd
Okay.
like to see like the
Let's see.
whole screen. Or I don't know if it's the first option.
From the beginning? Oh, that's weird because I'm seeing the white. I'm seeing it large. That's why I was asking.
Okay. Okay.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
I'm glad you said something. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna stop screen sharing for just a second and see.
In the meanwhile, so far so good, everyone, with the information that Michelle is providing. Okay.
Okay, now I'm gonna try and share again. Let's see. I have too many screens open, I think. Okay. Let's see. Let's try this one. How about that? Are you seeing it whole screen?
Yes, now good.
Okay,
now
perfect. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, thank you for telling me. Okay, so if you are looking at undergraduate admissions, preferred timeline start brainstorming and planning at the beginning of your sophomore year. I know that sounds very early, but what you're looking for is not necessarily the institution that you're applying to. What you're looking for is people who might be able to write a strong letter of recommendation for you. Okay, so this is where you start building relationships. If you're applying for undergraduate admissions, generally you're going to need at least one, if they require recommendations, you're going to need at least one teacher and then your counselor, your high school counselor. And so this gives you time to build a relationship. That means making sure that you're thinking through who you're going to ask. Okay, and that's coming up a little bit later, but generally you want to start thinking about this at the beginning of your sophomore year. This is the preferred thing. It is recommended. I recommend at least asking by the spring of your junior year, especially if you're doing that early decision, early action, because those are generally due in November. And what you don't want to do is leave it to the last minute, have a great junior year, and then your teacher goes on vacation over the summer, and then they come back in the fall semester, and they're busy with classes. You're busy as a senior now and such, and it gets rushed. So recommended, if you had a really great junior year teacher and you had a really great junior year and your counselor knows it, go ahead and talk to them during the spring of your junior year. That way they have the whole summer to think about it. They have time to really write you a really strong recommendation letter. The absolute latest is the beginning of senior year, especially for very selective colleges and institutions. You want to do it before, before your senior year, but if you have to, at the beginning of your senior year, and such. So just, you cannot start planning soon enough, and you want to give people plenty of time to write. How to ask somebody. This is always, a lot of students have a difficult time asking. So you want to ask in person, okay? You want to also make sure that you are respectful of their time, and you generally do not want to put them in your teacher or your counselor in an awkward position of having this discussion with other people around. So maybe you ask them after class if they're not in a rush to go to the next class. Maybe if you see them during lunch, you can say, "Hi, I'd like to set up a time to talk to you about recommendation letters." If they have office hours, go during office hours, or sometime you want to make sure that you're being respectful of their time. You also should not text them your request. Do not text them your request. You shouldn't generally ask during class or when other students are present, okay? Because that puts kind of the spotlight on the person and you want to make them feel comfortable. So generally, just you can ask them kind of casually, like, "Can I chat with you sometime about letters of recommendation?" And if they say yes, then you follow it up with an email, a professional sounding email. "Dear Mrs. So-and-so, algebra teacher, thank you so much for your time. I would like to schedule an appointment with you or schedule a time to talk with you about letters of recommendation, etc." And then you go ahead and schedule the meeting, okay? One of the other things I like to say is that when you're kind of planting this seed about the letters of recommendation, you say something very definitive. Do you feel like you know me well enough to write a strong letter of recommendation by November 1st? Because I'm applying early decision, early action, right? There's some key parts in that question. Do you know me well enough, right? Do you feel like you know me as a learner, as a student, as a leader at my school to write me this? Also, you don't just want a letter of recommendation. You want a strong one. So give them an adjective. I want a strong letter of recommendation. And then you also tell them the deadline, right? You tell them because that way they have time to think about, oh, do they have other things going on? Do they have the time? Do they know you well enough? And can they write you a strong letter of recommendation? So strong is key here. Rushing recommenders might lead to a letter that's not as polished, not as positive, not as strong as it could have been. So you want to give them plenty of time. If you have anxiety or you're nervous about asking, practice, okay? If you know that you get nervous about these kinds of things, practice ahead of time with a friend, a parent, your Education USA advisor, but go ahead and practice. And then you want to follow up with an email request and a formal email request and confirmation. Okay, so that's really key there. If you are doing if you're looking for graduate admissions, it's the same sort of process if you're still in undergraduate. So you want to start brainstorming generally around the beginning of your junior year. You start building relationships with your professors. The reason why junior year is important is because generally you've moved out of your sort of core curriculum and into your major. And so these are professors who should know you very well. And again, same sort of thing. Do you feel like you know me well enough to write a strong letter of recommendation by this day? And then you followed up with an email that has more details about what you're asking them for. Okay, so generally you want a general confirmation, yes, no, and then you follow it up with a formal email request, something that they can hold on to and that they can use to help build the letter. Okay, I hope that's clear. Does anybody have any questions about when? It's never too early. It's never too early. So go ahead and think about that. Okay, so who should write you your letters of recommendations? Oftentimes you have started the process and you're like, I'm ready to ask, but who do I ask? I know lots of people. I know lots of teachers, professors, colleagues, coaches, counselors. Who do I ask? So generally, if you are applying for undergraduate or you are applying for graduate school, there are some people that you can ask. First of all, you want to make sure that the person you ask knows you well enough to speak about how you are in the classroom or your high school or college, right? Or in the workplace. So I just, instead of doing 3 different slides, just kind of adapt it for your situation. So does this person know your strengths academically as well as personally, right? Does this person know you well enough to write about who you are as a learner? Okay. If you're asking a professor, you want to make sure that they can talk about you as a student, not, oh, they were nice. They came to class on time every day. They, didn't cause any problems. That's not a strong letter of recommendation. Okay. They need to be able to talk about how you were a diligent student, how you were academically excellent in their classroom. They need to write about how you overcame obstacles maybe with course material, how you presented yourself in class as a leader during class discussions. They want to know who you are as a student. So that professor that you're asking should be able to speak to you about that. If it's a counselor that you're asking, right? This is where the early cultivation of the relationship comes in. You want to make sure that that person can talk about you holistically at the school. They've seen you play sports. They've seen you at extracurricular activities and clubs and community service and stuff. They can write about that, okay? Does this person know you well enough? Does this person know you well enough to discuss how you would contribute to a future college community, right? So what their job is to paint the picture of you and what you would look like at your future school. And so make sure that they know you well enough. Does this person know you well enough to share your personal characteristics, persistence, determination, um, empathy, right? Those kinds of characteristics. So this is a pretty big task for somebody. And so you want to make sure that you pick the right person and you're able to give them all the reasons why they should recommend you. You want to build these student, teacher, counselor, student relationships early. You want them to be able to talk about things like academic strengths, work ethic, intellectual curiosity, achievements, teamwork, resilience, integrity, right? How well do you collaborate with peers? Do you bring people into conversations? Have they seen you do this in the classroom? Or if you're in a workplace situation, have they seen you do this in the workplace? How they've seen you, how you've reacted maybe to disappointment or hard assignments, right? How did you react to that? Did you react positively with determination? Did you ask for help? Did you, or did you just shut down? Hopefully you didn't shut down. And such. So again, you want to make sure that they can speak to all of these positive attributes of who you are as a learner in your classroom and in your school community. If you are a high school student, it should be a teacher from 10th, 11th, or 12th grade. So that's really important. If you're an undergraduate right now applying to graduate school, it should be somebody generally who's had you in the last year or two and such. It does not, for anybody, it does not have to be a person, a professor or teacher that you got an easy A from. Okay, so if you got an A, great, good for you in the class. But if it was an easy A, and the teacher didn't really know you well, they're not going to be able to write as strong a recommendation as perhaps a hard-earned A or B, right? They can write about your persistence, how you asked for help, how you helped others, how you took advantage of opportunities in the classroom to do better. So again, it can be a teacher who saw you challenged in the classroom academically and such, and then how you responded, right? Because they're looking at who's going to come to our campus, and when they encounter issues, how are they going to respond, right? And so this recommender can write a recommendation for you if they have seen how you've responded to challenges. A couple of cautions. One, if you sense hesitation from the person that you are asking, that teacher that you asked after class and such, if they're like, okay, if they hesitate, okay, you may want to choose somebody else, okay? You do not want a letter that somebody feels like they have to write. Okay, you want to choose someone who's excited to talk about you and what a great student you are. Okay, you want someone who's going to be enthusiastic about writing your recommendation letter and can see you at a school, can see you doing well. Do not ask your relatives to write recommendations for you. That's really important. Do not ask your friends, your family members, anybody like that to write a letter of recommendation for you. It kind of takes away from the validity of the recommendation. Also, your recommenders do not have to be well-known, influential, prestigious people with big titles who don't know you well. Okay? If they don't know you well, if they can't talk about you as a student, as a learner in a classroom, they do not need to be writing a letter of recommendation for you. Prestigious people don't necessarily impress college admissions people. They want to know how you're going to do in the classroom. So pick someone who can talk about you in the classroom. The teacher is the academic part, and the counselor is more holistic. It's the overall experience, especially for those in high school. So again, just to reiterate, start early, make sure this person knows you, and it does not have to be somebody who is prestigious or has a fancy title. Okay, it has to be someone who knows you as a teacher, or them as a teacher, you as a student or your counselor. Okay. Let's see. What do you give to your recommender? So as you are thinking about who your recommender is going to be, you also need to be thinking about like how prepared you are to give your recommender information about yourself, and to help them write this letter for you, because it is a big ask. So in your email request, so we're going through the steps. One, I've asked my counselor, Miss Mabel Martinez, I've said, hey, will you please write me a letter of recommendation? Can you write me a strong letter of recommendation by November 1st? And she says, yes, we're in the hallway talking and such. I'm going to go home. I'm going to follow up with an email request confirming, number one, that she's going to do this. And then I'm going to give her some information to help her. She probably already knows this, but I'm going to give it to her anyways. I'm going to write a cover letter. Dear Ms. Martinez, thank you so much for agreeing to write a letter of recommendation for me, etc. You're going to put it in formal writing. You're going to remind your recommender of what you learned from them. So Ms. Martinez, I am so appreciative of the time in algebra class that you helped me after school. I really learned a lot from you, the way that you showed me how math works in all ways, etc. How they influenced you, one or two things that you did in class, right? A great class project that you worked on, extra work that you did, etc. You want to describe to your recommender your college and or career plans. I'm applying to these colleges because they have the best microbiology programs, and that's what I really want to go into. I want to work on microbiology. I want to be a microbiologist when I grow up, whatever it is you want to be, and stuff. So you want to remind them of that. You want to, so they don't have to guess. So they're not like, I know this person really well, but I can't remember if they've ever told me what they want to be when they grow up or why they're even going to these colleges. You want to put that in your email request so that way they don't have to guess. Also, if you're applying for a scholarship, include information about scholarships, specific scholarships. Your resume, you want to make sure it's updated. For graduate school, you might ask your recommender if they would like to see your personal statement, which you usually submit when you apply for grad school, a personal statement. So again, you can ask would you like to see my personal statement? You can also include a reminder if you're applying for graduate school of the classes you took with them, the grade that you received, and any special or memorable projects or research that you conducted. You also want to include a recommendation profile, aka the brag sheet. So I don't know if y'all have seen brag sheets before. You can just Google college brag sheet and there's a million of them. They'll pop up. But again, a brag sheet is, there's lots of online examples, and this is what might not be on your resume or on your school transcript. So these are other things. They can be unique experiences that you've had, good and bad. Some brag sheets have list 5 words to describe you, right? Some brag sheets talk about do you have a personal motto? How did you maximize opportunities? What barriers do you face and such? But you want to give a picture of yourself to the recommender. It has to all be true and it has to be authentically you. So again, describe your potential, describe your motivation. What do you have to succeed in college? You also want to include deadlines. That's going to be very important. So your recommender needs to know, I need this by November 1st. I need a letter to university number 1 by November 1st. I need a letter to university number 2 by December 1st, etc. So you want to make sure you have all of those deadlines listed for them. Don't make them guess or have to look it up for themselves. You want to make it easier for them.
Michelle, sorry.
Yes.
Just want to let you know that Enrique has a question.
Oh, yes, Enrique, go ahead.
Yes.
Yeah, I have one question as well. Like
Sure.
the professor say, my professor was like biology and all that kind of stuff, and I did like real great, and it's tough with them. But the problem is that I want to major in political science, so there is like clash there. So should I ask them, or should I go for a social studies teacher? Like, say with him, he can say for my academic like potential and all that kind of stuff. Like I survived really hard courses and all that kind of stuff. Like again, it is not related like to my major or what I want to study. So how would it work?
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. I would say that you would want, and again, it depends on the school, it depends on how they phrase what they want their teacher recommendations. If they're just asking for one recommendation and such, then if you feel like this biology teacher can speak to your characteristics as a learner, as a student, as a leader in the classroom, can talk about your grit, your ambition and such, you can use that one. Okay. It does not necessarily have to be a teacher who is in the field that you want to go to. Okay. This is also something that you can kind of think about too, think about carefully. If you have social studies or history teachers that wouldn't be able to write a strong recommendation letter for you, if it feels like it's kind of generic or vague, then that's not going to make you stand out. So where you can stand out is by having a teacher who can talk about your positive academic qualities. That also may be something you want to discuss with your counselor too. Okay, so just make sure that you're including your counselor in on this as well. But yeah, your letters of recommendation, unless the university or college that you're applying to says, oh, you're going into a STEM field or you're going into this field, you need a letter from that particular a person who's taught you that subject. Unless they've said that, then you're generally more free to pick a teacher who knows you well and can write you a strong letter of recommendation. I would also say that perhaps what you could do is you could discuss with the teacher, the biology teacher, hey, I'm going into political science, and perhaps there are maybe not subject matter, but like characteristics of biology and the way that you've studied biology that you develop transferable skills that would be good with political science. For example, so like let's say you did really well in biology and you're really good at interpreting data, right? Like and doing statistics and looking at outcomes and looking at graphs and interpreting graphs and charts. A lot of political science has to do with statistics as well. So making sure that they're highlighting your transferable skills from biology and that realm into, political science. So I don't know, does that help you, Enrique?
Yeah, it sure does. Thanks.
Okay. All right. And talk with your counselor too. Okay. And this is where that relationship comes in with your counselor, who's going to write you a letter of recommendation as well. So maybe they can kind of fill in the blanks for the political science part. So maybe you're in debate or something like that, right? Like that can be, a strong point of that letter. And then the academic grit and determination and excellence can come from the biology teacher. But again, it's not just you say, oh, hey, can you write me a letter? Not that you do this, but like, hey, can you write me a letter? And then they say yes, and then that's it. Like it's a relationship that you're building with them to make sure that they understand why you're motivated to go into political science, why you're interested in going into whatever field you want to go into. So Also, good job with political science. I was a political science major, so happy to plug that. Okay, so that's a really great question. And that's something, bring it back to the brag sheet. That's something you can also, kind of stick in your brag sheet as well, that you're not just political science, history, government, interested in that you can do well in other courses as well, not just in what your designated major might be and stuff. You want to make sure in that relationship talk that you're having with your counselor and with your teachers, you want to give them the deadlines, but you also want to tell them how to submit. Okay, so if there are links that they need to click on and stuff like that, you want to tell them exactly how they're supposed to submit this. Generally your teachers are going to be a little bit older and stuff, and like me, I'm an older person. Technology sometimes doesn't always work the way we think it's going to work, so you want to make sure that you help them out as much as you can. And then the last thing is to just really remember to thank the recommender, be professional, be courteous, express your gratitude, and do not ask to see the letter. You should already trust this person. If they said yes and you trusted them and asked them and stuff, do not ask to see the letter. They're gonna, you're gonna help them. You're gonna give them as much as you can to help them write a great letter, but the letter is their letter to write for you. So do not ask them to see the letter. And usually on the applications, you check a box that says you're not gonna look at the letter. You don't want to see the letter. Okay, so that's the email request. And such, which is usually the hardest part. You're kind of waiting on pins and needles for stuff to happen. Okay, so this is a real letter that I wrote for an undergraduate student. Am I okay on time, Christy and Mabel? Am I doing okay on time?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Okay. So for a student and I've redacted all the personal stuff, who's interested in going to graduate school. So this is sort of the short version of it. So, you can see where she had asked me in person, and then she sent me a follow-up email. She did all the right things. And she was in one of my classes. And so I was able to write her, and we discussed before I wrote the letter. She never saw the letter, but we discussed before the letter what kinds of things I might include in there and stuff. And so again, I only had her for one class, and that was really important, that even though I only had her for one course, that I emphasized it was a small class. She was very enthusiastic during participation, and so I was able to get her to know her as an overall student, and stuff. And so again, it's multiple paragraphs. Here's one thing that your recommendation letter writers may be worried about, but generally they can write it in paragraphs, or they can write it in bullet points, whatever is easiest for admissions officers to read, selection committees to get through and read. So bullet points are okay. So if for some reason you find out that they did not write it in paragraphs, they wrote it in bullet points, that's okay, because the bullet points, so long as they're answering the same questions, it's totally fine. So you can see this is where I started it. Here I gave her a very specific track record of success, rigorous research skills, excellent, like I'm trying to explain to them how great she did in class. She shared in class discussions. She oftentimes did not agree with all of her classmates, but she justified all of her discussion participation with facts and evidence and valuable contributions and such. So again, trying to build her up. This is who she was as a student in my classroom that I saw firsthand. So again, you can see, looking at insightful, she wants to go into history. So analysis, interpretation, sharing, reflecting what she learned in the class. And such. So again, it was kind of a longer letter, but again, she really shone. She stuck out in my mind. She did really an excellent project, and stuff. So again, she wants to go into history. So I made sure to emphasize the skills that history graduate programs are looking for. Again, just kind of doing that. So that's generally what your letter can look like and stuff, but you want to make sure that you've given your professor, your teacher, whoever it is, enough information so that it jogs their memory, that you talk to them about it and such. But when it comes time to writing it, they write it, and that's it. You don't get to really engage with them anymore about it, and don't ask them to see it. Okay, so what do you do next? You've done all these things, asked, gave them the information, you've done the timing on it and such. You are going to wait, which is hard. So before the deadline to turn in the applications and such, you're going to do your part. You're going to do your essays that you might have to do. You're going to get your financial documents together. You're going to do all that. You're going to keep in touch with your recommenders. You're going to give any updates to your brag sheet if needed. Let's say you won an award, you did science fair, you did something. Give them a little notice like, hey, you know, I just wanted to let you know I have a little bit more to brag about. You're going to, if they have not submitted yet, 2 weeks before the deadline, you're going to send them a polite reminder, right? A polite reminder, not, hey, where's my letter? It's going to be more like, just checking on this, just wanted to let you know I'm working on my application and such, and the deadline to submit is in 2 weeks. You can do it 3 weeks if you need to, if you want to, if you're anxious about it. Okay. After your recommender has submitted correctly, you want to write and deliver a thank you note. Handwritten is preferred. People remember handwritten thank you notes because we don't get them often. So handwritten thank you note is always good. And then you're going to update your recommenders with all of your good news about your wonderful college acceptances. You're going to thank them for being part of this. And you're not going to forget about them after you go to college or graduate school. You're going to, you know, they did a tremendous thing for you. You worked hard. They, you know, helped you show that in the best possible light. For those of you who are in high school or college, make sure that even though you have hit those deadlines, those application deadlines, make sure that you maintain your high positive academic performance and character throughout your entire senior year. Don't slump, don't slack off, don't think, oh, I got into college, woohoo, because it's not like that. So you've got to keep going on that. And you know, someone vouched for you, at least 2 people vouched for you, your counselor and your teacher. Make sure that you continue to be the person that they wrote about, and such. So, in summary, do think about who can write you the strongest letters of recommendation. Do plan ahead and ask early. Do you provide information to the recommender like a brag sheet? Do you be helpful and courteous with submission deadlines? Be appreciative. Don't take it personally if somebody says, I can't write a letter of recommendation for you. I have turned down students, one, because they didn't give me enough time. They were like, I need one tomorrow. And then the other one is that I did not know them well enough to write a strong letter of recommendation. I just flat out told them, I was like, I think you're a wonderful person, and I've known you for the last 2 years, your junior and senior year. But when you were a freshman in my class, I literally told a student this, you fell asleep every single morning at 8 o'clock in the morning in my class. And I was like, I can't write a letter for you about your academics and such. They found somebody else. They made it to grad school. It was fine. But I had to be honest with them, and they didn't take it personally. Don't forget to build a relationship. Don't exceed the number of required recommendation letters. If it says 2, give them 2. Okay. More is not necessarily more in this case. So if they say 2, give them 2, the 2 best you can get. Don't be impatient with your recommenders, fine line. And don't forget to double check that the recommender submitted correctly. So those are some of my tips there. And questions. I know I talked a lot. Any other questions?
If you have any question, guys, you can type it in the chat or you can raise your hand. I do have a question.
Sure. Okay. I'll do my best.
So what if the person who knows the student like best and has worked with him or her doesn't speak English?
Oh, that's a really good question. I, that's a really good question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. Has that occurred for you guys as Education USA advisors?
Yes.
Oh, wow. I have to say I am stumped. I would be interested to hear what you have to say about it, because I'm not sure.
Well, what I've told them is that maybe they can, like, the person can write the letter in Spanish and then have someone else translate it, but not
Yeah.
not the applicant. Like, it has to be someone
Okay.
else. Could be.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would say that that's one option. I would also say that that's a really good question for the admissions office, because
Okay.
there may be somebody in the admissions office who is fluent in, let's say, Spanish, right? Who would be able to read it, because sometimes there is some nuances in language, right? That from one language to another, and such, that
Yeah.
may be difficult to translate in English. But I would say reach out to the admissions office and ask that question, just because they may say, oh, it's fine to translate it, just get a certified translator for it.
Mm-hmm.
Or they may say, that's totally fine. We have somebody on staff who, in our admissions office, who is fluent in Spanish and would be able to handle that. That's not a problem. But I would say ask the admissions office about that. I'm sure it does happen. And I would hate for the assumption to be, okay, I should automatically translate it, and stuff, when there's the possibility that they could
Okay.
accept it, and stuff. But that's a really good admissions office question.
Okay. Okay.
And for those of you who are applying to stuff, the admissions office, that is their job. They want to help people apply. So if there are questions like that, that would be my first step, is just to ask, is that okay? And such. Yeah, that's a really good question though.
Okay. Thank you. Good. And well, there's another question. It says, how much concise can we make the letter? Well, I think, well, if you have the answer, Michelle.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the person there's no right or wrong answer, right? There's only, like, how well does that person, um, how well can they express your positive attributes, and such. So, um, I I would think that one page is going to be the minimum, and 2 to 3 pages, depending on what's in there. You don't want them just to put stuff in there to put stuff in there, right? You want that to be substantive. And they may have a story or thoughts to share about your academic component, but then also they may share about how, you were a leader in the classroom as well, that not only did you shine academically, right? But also maybe you help tutor other students. You were always willing to be the helper, right? That counts too, right? And so if that takes a little bit longer in the letter, I think that that's fine. They can maybe bullet point it if they need to, your academic highlights, you won science fair, you went to this national competition and stuff. But even some of that is going to be maybe on other parts of your application, like your extracurriculars and stuff. Really, what the teacher can do and the counselor can do is talk about you as the person. What's not on your transcript? What's not on your extracurricular sheet? What's not on your resume? And a lot of that has to do with who you are as a person and the characteristics that you have. So if it takes them 2 to 3 pages to write that, because you're an awesome person, let them write their 2 to 3 pages. That's totally fine. And people like reading true, interesting stories about students, because that helps them get a sense. If it's just a recitation of your resume, then they've already got that. They don't, that doesn't bring anything new to the table. Each part of your application should show the admissions committee a new part of you, a different part of you in a different light, and such. Your transcript, if you're a 4.0 student, great. We already know you got all A's. Who are you as a student then? Are you kind? Are you sharing? Are you a leader? Do you bring people into the conversation? Do you help others? Do you engage in debate, right? Those are things that don't show up on your transcript, but a teacher or counselor can talk about that.
Thank you. And we have some other questions in the
Sure.
chat.
Okay.
Giovanna is asking, for graduate school, is it better to ask professors to talk about our research-related experience, or how can we achieve a balance between the academic and leadership dimension? And I think that you just mentioned that, right, Michelle?
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
if
you can have them write about both. That's fine. If, you know, there was a great group project that you did, fantastic. And you were a leader in it, totally great. And stuff. And they can also talk about like, and you know, you're a rock star in the chemistry lab, you know.
Okay, thank you. Then Guillermo is asking, for me, this is the hardest part of the application. Last time that I applied for graduate studies, my referee sent the reference letters one day before the deadline, even though I sent them reminders every week. What can I do in those cases?
Oof. So they did get the letter in on time, but the student felt that it was rushed. Is that the question? Wait, let me see.
Yes.
Yes, okay.
This is yes.
Okay, yeah. Unfortunately, there's no, you know, the deadline is the deadline. If they make it by the deadline, it still counts as being in, so that's positive. At least they didn't miss the deadline. You may want to have some backups just in case.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes someone says they're able to, and you know, you're reminding them, but in about 2 weeks, if they're like, I can't do it and such, you know, having a backup. And that's a whole separate thing of how do you ask somebody at the last minute, which is an even bigger ask. But yeah, I would, if you were reminding them and they still kind of rushed it at the last minute, I don't know, maybe look at somebody else for the next time. Pick somebody else, start cultivating those relationships, unless they had some extenuating circumstances. So I did have a student who was waiting on a recommendation letter, and they did get it on time, but there were some extenuating circumstances with the professor, and it did take a little bit more nudging, but they did get it in on time, and such. But yeah, it's if they're kind of a last minute person, then, you know, and you know that, then maybe pick somebody else, ask somebody else, just to be safe. So.
Okay, good. And one last question says, for graduate studies, is it acceptable to have the letters written by someone from your workplace instead of someone from your university?
Yes, that's acceptable. So, especially if there's a kind of a gap in between your undergraduate and graduate. So let's say you did your undergraduate and then maybe you worked for a number of years. That's acceptable too. Same sort of concept though. Do they know you well enough to talk about how you might be in a academic setting, like a kind of professional setting, a professional academic setting? And can they write that strong recommendation letter for you about things that are not necessarily on your resume, or on your transcript from your undergrad? So, for example, I went back to grad school myself, and such after a period of time, to get a second master's degree. And I asked my colleagues, you know, my supervisors and such, here at the university to write letters of recommendation for me, because the other professors, it was the time had gone too long and such. And so that's generally acceptable for if you've had that sort of work gap there. So yeah, it's just got to be somebody who knows you well, somebody can talk about you, and your characteristics, and in this case, your potential as an academic, in the academic setting. So if you're great, if you have great organizational skills at your job now, if they can talk about how that's a transferable skill into organization, and meeting deadlines for graduate work, that's great. They can transfer that over. They can talk about that in that way.
Okay,
Mhm.
great. And well,
Okay.
I think that was the last
Okay.
question. So
Okay.
thank you so much, Michelle. I think
You're
this
very welcome.
presentation was very useful for our cohort, for our
Okay.
advices.
Well, you're very welcome. So, again, I've put my email address there, and such. So feel free to reach out. I work at as you can tell, I work at a smaller institution, Delta State University in Mississippi. And so we definitely have to write letters of recommendation for our students, for fellowships, for scholarships, for, job recommendations and stuff. So it's pretty, we're always happy to do it, but we do appreciate when there's a little bit of time for us to write those letters, and such.
And just, Michelle, if you can really share, like she had like a presentation about Mississippi that we're running out of time. Maybe we are not going to be able to go through, but if you can highlight the programs, because Christy and I, we have the pleasure to visit Michelle Institution, and it's a very nice and welcoming one. So maybe you can share some 5 programs that you are very strong. We have different backgrounds here, and all
Yeah.
of them are very interested in apply
Okay.
to
That's
university.
not a problem. Like I said, I'm happy to share about letters of recommendation. I want all of you to go to the schools that you dream of going to, right? And I know letters of recommendation can make the difference. So I'm always happy to talk about that. I work at Delta State. I love this institution. I got my first graduate degree here. I've been here for a number of years. If any of you are looking at graduate MBA programs, that is our most popular graduate program. Um, we we have affordable tuition. A lot of our students honestly find us because they're like, oh, we Google affordable universities, affordable MBAs. And that's how they found us. We're not ashamed of that. We want to make sure that education is accessible for everybody. So we don't tack on an extra $10,000 because you don't have an American passport and such. So we don't do that. We're a friendly, welcoming university. Our staff to teacher to student ratio is 11-1. I write really good recommendation letters, honestly, because I know my students really well. We have students who stop by. We're a really friendly campus and community. Our community is very welcoming as well. If you're an undergraduate, if you're at all interested in business or aviation, we have the only aviation program in the state of Mississippi. Our business programs are really popular as well. We have nursing, psychology, we have STEM programs, we have social sciences and humanities as well. So we're not a huge institution. You're not going to be able to hide or anything like that. You're not going to get lost or forgotten. We know all of our students, we take really good care of our international students, and they make a huge difference. We want all of our international students to be seen, valued, and heard on campus. So I think we do those things well. I love this institution. I went to a very large institution, like 30,000 undergraduates and stuff, and I enjoyed my time there, but I came here for graduate school and I've stayed to teach and to continue what was given to me here, which was a very individualized education and real relationships with people. So we find that a lot with our students. So if that's the kind of place that you're interested in, please give us a look. We also have what I think is the best mascot in all of the United States colleges. We have a very unusual mascot. And we just have like little quirky traditions here and such, but our students get into it, and our international students oftentimes come for undergraduate and they stay for graduate because the price is right and they know the place and they're comfortable and happy here. So yeah, that's it. You can look us up, Delta State University in Cleveland, Mississippi. Yeah, just happy to help. And I really do wish all of you the absolute best. My daughter went through the college, if you're in high school, the whole college thing. It was nerve-wracking. I've applied to graduate schools myself and stuff. And so I wish all of you the absolute best, and rely on your Education USA advisors. They know so much. They know so much. And it was a pleasure to have both of them here and to visit your beautiful city of Guadalajara. I loved it. I didn't get enough time there, but maybe I'll come back for the World Cup. So
Yes.
yeah.
Or for our fair.
Yeah, I know. I'm working on that. I'm working on that. I'm working on
Okay.
that. But yeah, so anyways, but
Yes,
if,
thank you.
you're welcome. You're very, very welcome.
We would be
Okay,
happy
that's a
to
wrap.
have you here in Guadalajara again.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so that's a wrap. Thank you very much to everyone for connecting to the session. We will
Mhm.
see you next session regarding the interview strategies for you to really share with the interviews your maximum potential. So see you. And if you have any questions, please write it on the WhatsApp group. Thank you, Michelle.
All right,
Thank you,
bye.
Michelle.
Thank you.